There is something special about Shadows of Doubt. This detective sim is powered by some beautifully crafted and well thought out game systems that ensures the guess game of whodunit is both enjoyable and engrossing. It's best described as the spawn of Disco Elysium and Papers, Please, and dear God people, that is a great honour that Reggie can bestow upon Shadows of Doubt so early in its life. In fact, it might just be early contender for Indie Game of the Year. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's have a chat in today's review. Welcome back, my pedigree chums, and as always, with early access titles, things can and will change, so take everything I say here with a pinch of salt. However, I also give a score based on the fact that $20 is being asked for here, and full disclosure, the developers kindly gave me an early review copy, so know that even what Reggie says today may differ to what you lot experience upon its early access release. And discover really is what Shadows of Doubt is all about. One of its greatest advantages versus other games lies within its originality. Here you find yourself playing as a detective living in a city comparable to Slough in the UK, or for you Americans, something like Detroit. Every person here is simulated. They have jobs, they live in apartments, they have routines and travel about the city as they try to avoid getting shanked by criminals. And as a retiring detective, you must find out who committed various crimes, where potentially everyone is a suspect. Disco Elysium is sort of similar in the sense that you solve crimes based on clues, but Shadows of Doubt is more dynamic and open-ended, where things are procedurally generated and it contains a whole lot less text. Totally different game, of course, but the fact that I call out Disco Elysium as a comparison says more about the lack of detective-style games out there, which is why Shadows of Doubt feels so different. And Papers, Please was also mentioned in my opening gambit, as you'll be doing a lot of spot the difference, checking evidence with other evidence to understanding where your next lead is. Everything here, it just feels fresh in an industry of remakes and remasters. This freshness is a standout feature for Reggie, and it revolves around the game mechanics. The game presents you various systems that you piecemeal together, which is then woven into a much larger structure, and when all said and done, you would have discovered countless clues, looking back over who the potential suspect is before making your arrest. Columbo himself would be proud. And so the game begins, whereby you create your character, which of course meant that I named my detective Reggietta Piglet, a female detective who I promised would be criminal as the people she puts behind bars. And that in itself is the lovely part of Shadows of Doubt, as there is a multitude of ways to go about solving crimes. You can continually break the law if it is a means to your end. For example, you can break into apartments, you can hack computers, sabotage security systems, stalk people, smash windows, and generally become detective. It's these systems that I'll explain through in the first case without giving any spoilers away, which demonstrates how well thought out coal-powered games crafted their world. Now, the game, I believe, is set in 1979, which is ideal as we have no internet or no mobile porn to contend with, but instead good old-fashioned police business. So in your first murder case, you'll need to investigate a crime scene. Here you collect fingerprints, read the notes littered around the place, understand what the murder weapon is, and hopefully even a motive. And you'll begin to learn about the victim, where they worked, who they spoke to, their email login. Yes, this part for some reason did make it into 1979, but we'll ignore that. And so your investigation becomes an entanglement of locations and people. You'll eventually go to a potential suspect's place of residence, which required Reggie to do a few naughty things, like hack a few systems along the way, just like he did to Frank the Mank back in the 70s. And should you get caught, you'll either get fined or given a bloody good slap by the multitude of security systems in place defending areas. Simply running away usually stops the pursuit, giving you a sort of reset moment to tackle the task all over again, as if what you did a few moments ago is all but forgotten about. Now, for some of you that may seem off-putting and a little unrealistic, but it's done with the reason of propelling you forward to solving your case. Eventually I got what I needed, but discovered I'd missed a few important clues to place my suspect at the crime scene. I was desperate to get their fingerprints to match. One of the best ways to get a foothold in any case is understanding a name and address, and this is where the city directory comes into play, which is the name and number of every resident that dwells there. Here I was able to track back the last call made on certain telephones, then trace those numbers by going to the call logs which are hacked into with the building basement. Now with each little nugget of info you can pin it to your evidence board. The choice is yours of course as to what you pin or don't pin, but over time your evidence wall looks like a crime scene in itself, with bits of string linking one item to the next as if a child and kitten played with a ball of wool. So confused was I that Reggie Piglet went down the path of tracing a phone number who I thought was the suspects. I managed to work my way back to get into the apartment number by cross-referencing the call logs from 2 other apartments on the outgoing call list, and as I entered the apartment I realised it was my own bloody apartment and my own bloody phone number that I'd inadvertently traced. And whilst I looked into my piglet reflection with deep shame, it perhaps demonstrated to me just how efficient and well woven these game mechanics are, as they give you the tools without giving you the direct answer. Come the end of it, the first murder case took Reggie a few hours to solve as he built up his understanding of all the systems at play, and I had great fun putting a resolution to the case. And once you solve that initial case, things open up to be far more open-ended, where you can find work on job boards that go above and beyond solving murders, where money can then be used to upgrade your apartment in the hope of eventually retiring away from the city. I for one took on jobs where I had to steal secret documents, photograph people in certain situations, or my favourite was humiliating someone and taking a photo of it, very much like the tossers of TikTok we see today. There is more than what I've mentioned, all procedurally generated to give you a playground of tools to use. However, the one issue I would say is that the other murder cases don't seem to be as in-depth as the initial case, which I believe Cole-Powered Games handcrafted, perhaps showing that there is plenty more room for further handcrafted cases to be added, even if that means in some sort of DLC. This is where the game shines most, and it almost seems a bit of a come down to tackle the wider game with less intricate crimes to solve. Other frustrating things I noticed was that some cases appeared to almost be impossible to solve. I was asked to find someone with no name, sex or job other than to say that they had blue eyes and lived in a huge apartment complex. I thought back to everything I was taught and I couldn't see a way of doing this, so to my mind there may be some bugs at hand on those cases that are almost too cold, but nothing a patch can't fix up in due course. So in regards to those systems that work around you, what we haven't discussed is the tools that are provided to give you that edge. The Fingerprint Scanner is one such tool that scans not just fingerprints but also footprints to help you build a suspect's profile. And to be clear, the world has thousands of different prints belonging to different residents, so finding what you need has to happen with thought in mind to trace back the steps. Worth noting, the fingerprints eventually do disappear, as do the footprints. Other items such as handcuffs allow you to arrest your suspect, and here they are more willing to answer questions when cuffed, but you can't leave them cuffed indefinitely, Guantanamo style. You'll have the usual weapons to defend yourself and other more curious items like a tracker that you can put on people that shows where they are on the world map or when someone enters a particular zone. There is also a code breaker to break into computers and safes, but I much prefer trying to discover the notes left in the environment to get my way in. Shadows of Doubt then gives you everything you need, and most importantly is you really do feel like a proper detective. I mentioned the map, and perhaps this is a good place to begin the assessment on graphics. The closest looking game to this style of art is Teardown. Its pixel-esque retro feel gives it a certain charm and allows for some dramatic moments in lighting. The map will seem small at first glance. I remember in my first hour feeling somewhat let down by its small size. That's what she said, but that quickly grew into something huge. That's what she said as I looked up above me. You see all those windows up there? Well, every single one of them is a room that can be entered. That's right, my pedigree chums. The scale in this map isn't in the horizontal but in the vertical. I believe the tallest buildings contain 19 floors, so there are literally hundreds of rooms to go in and enter, investigate and cause havoc in, and each room is littered with furnishings that can be interacted with to find other clues, including going through air-conditioned shafts for easy access. Everything here feels in place, and even with the absence of cars in this crime-ridden city, it feels alive and kicking. I mentioned the lighting in places, but in particular is when you enter an elevator and you can see see its shadows cascade on walls or the reflective lighting on the floors of City Hall. Now personally, I'd like to see this ramped up even further, as there is opportunity for more dramatic effects. In other places it seems a little off. The flashlight, for example, has the power of 1,000 suns, and when shone on certain items it just gives a pure white glow, making it hard to see certain things like the faces of people or door numbers. Now I mentioned I'm on a review code, so I can't confirm what this will play like on release, but I did come across some optimization issues here and there. I'm running on a 4080 courtesy of Johnny Two Shoes, of course, and my system crawls down to 30-40 frames per second in some areas, but jumps up to 70 in others. In particular, City Hall was a major part for my computer to struggle on. I thought maybe it was a RAM issue, but I have 32 gigabytes of the stuff, so I'm hoping they can optimize this even better. And yes, there are plenty of bugs I had to contend with, such as falling through the city floor on the odd occasion, people suddenly attacking me American police style when I ask them a simple question, or my HUD showing these two red icons pointing out into the ocean, which I can't for the life of me seem to remove. But my favourite of all is this restaurant that's had its security system set off, and for it never to reset itself, massacring hundreds of customers all day long as they went about their daily coffee. However, this did actually make me appreciate the finer details, such as the glass eventually being boarded up once smashed, or how blood splatters accordingly. Here I am on the hospital bed after receiving a good shanking, only to see the hospital bed itself get soaked in my blood. Sound-wise, it's rather very good. It has an excellent soundtrack throughout, and at times when stealthing about a location, the music will kick in with that kind of moody, almost melodramatic score akin to something from Blade Runner, and it's never overplayed. It's just done right in terms of frequency. As for sound effects, they are pretty basic sounding, but I guess that is more in keeping with the art style and retro look and feel of the game than it is out of laziness. As a design choice, it works really well, and whilst never setting the place on fire, it certainly delivers where it counts. So Shadows of Doubt surprised me way more than it should have. I came in with zero expectations but left wanting more. It's a genuinely engrossing game that lets you live the life out of a detective, with intricate game systems ensuring the guess game of whodunit never gets old. My concerns then really stem from the opening case, because it's so bloody good that the more procedurally generated cases just don't quite reach those same heights. I think releasing a true questline here, maybe 10 curated murder cases to solve that entwine with each other, would be a brilliant addition to what's already a fantastic start. For $20 then, it's hard to knock this one down, and the score is based on day one of an early access release, which I believe is probably the highest I've ever rated an early access title. This one then can really only go up from here, and for Reggie's money, this might just be Indie Game of the Year. Until next time, my lovelies, Reggie out.